national parks don't let people in much anymore. Have you seen the number of tracks they've shut down? Have you got the feeling, whether it's from the no dog signs or the take your rubbish with you, which is cool, we all want to pick up our rubbish, but wouldn't it be nice if they supplied a bin, or the fact that the facilities are run down and useless, or the fact that they've closed down the camping grounds again and again and again, or the fact that they've stopped you going places and put in a little bollarded track and a little bit of a bushwalk or something like that, instead of letting you go in and experience it for yourself. You start to get the feeling after a while, if you've seen enough of this stuff, and I have, I've seen it everywhere, that the people who run national parks, the extreme greens in Canberra, don't like people. And they don't at all. Which is a real shame, because there's two types of greens. There's the I nearly said excretia greens. Wow, that's a big word for poo. The extreme greens, and then there's greenies like me and probably like you. People who just love being in the bush. People whose version of being green is to experience it at a hands-on level. Originally, back in the 1930s, national parks were started with a very, very simple charter. It had to be fairly simple because they'd taken all our tax money to pay for it. They still are. And it was to preserve big hunks of the Australian bushland, which was disappearing fairly quickly, for the enjoyment of the people of Australia, so they could see Australia in its wild natural state. Unfortunately, they've forgotten the second bit. Somewhere along the line, it all got hijacked by the extreme greens, and they're about the only ones who are allowed to go in to most of the parks, if they're, affiliated with the rangers and they fill out the paperwork and all the rest of that stuff. Meanwhile, the rest of us are getting shafted something stupid, and we're still paying for it. Doesn't have to be like this, folks. The reason it is like this is because we're just normal people, We don't have time to chain ourselves to trees. We're too busy working to pay our taxes and keep our kids in food and all the rest of that stuff, But it's time that we started making a bit of a noise. So we've started this Don't Lock Up Australia thing. I don't really know where we're going to go with it. I could give you half a dozen quick ideas, First of all, we want to get the message out, wake people up a bit, because maybe you can't see what's going in, or maybe you can see it, or maybe you've just seen a little bit of it. Stockton Beach, there's somewhere I bet a lot of you people know. It's shut for camping now. Oh, temporarily, the parks people say, but no one will tell us when it's going to open again for camping. How bad's that? What damage can you do at Stockton Beach? Oh, well, you might erode the sandhills. Oh, come off it. What kind of a galah came up with that as a concept? Anybody knows, sandhill, four-wheel drive, either gets there or it doesn't. It might do a bit of damage. Then this big storm comes through. Because Mother Nature's stronger than all these wallies in all these silly little offices in Canberra, and sorts the whole lot out again. That's what happens all over Australia. I've seen it on Fraser Island, I've seen it up Cape York, Western Tassie, whatever. Mother Nature, when she decides to come and hit you harder than any silly wally with a bunch of bollards can. You guys saw it here 2 days ago, didn't you? Someone just showed me a video of snow falling in Sussex Inlet, down south of here. You'd probably get a suntan there today. It's snowing the other day. Or up the Blue Mountains here when the highways got cut off with the snow, or you name it. That's Mother Nature. Bang, woofka, when you least expect it. And it's that kind of lack of common sense we're fighting, folks. There's a whole lot of things we intend doing in the future. I hope it never reaches the stage where we all have to hop in our four-wheel drives and take our camping gear and camp on the lawn at Parliament House in Canberra. But if they don't start listening, we might have to do that. It's worked for other people before. I reckon it'll work again. That's probably where it ends. Where it starts is getting the message out, raising a bit of awareness, getting politicians to see some numbers, because that's the only thing they react to anymore, is when we sign petitions and emails and things like that. Make a bit of noise. Keep an eye on Four Wheel Drive Action website, on the forum, on Don't Lock Up Australia website. As things come through, we publicise them. If there's going to be a run up Newcastle to protest Stockton, lack of camping, that's where you'll see it, hear about it. Come along, get stuck in. If we don't, these kids, this helicopter thing's fallen off, these kids won't be able to enjoy Australia the way we did, and that's not fair. I've got kids. Okay, that's the sad part. What could we do about it? I know you're asking. Well, there's a whole heap of things, but in the States, they lease the national parks out to people, to private contractors, and then they make their money back by opening them up. And they open them up appropriately so they're not worn out, but they do a real good job of management. You know, there's facilities, some areas for hunters, some areas for trail bikes, some areas for four-wheel drives. They keep as much of it open as they can at all times, mostly because they want to make a buck out of it. But they're not going anywhere, these places. They're still there. And you know what the result of all that is? They make money out of their national parks and everyone gets to enjoy them. You know what we got over here? We've got a system that costs us an absolute fortune and we're not allowed to go in. That's wrong, isn't it? You know, some days you've got to wake up thinking they're still treating us like convicts. So be aware of all that, please, and spread the word. If you buy any of those products in there, you know that the money's going towards this, eventually. We've already hired a lobbyist, mostly because no one at Four-Wheel Drive Action knows anything about politics. So we need to know so we can understand the system, understand what we can do to keep these tracks open, to keep Australia open for the next generations. It's very important to me, and I reckon when you find your favourite camping ground's been shut down, it'll be important to you too. Okay, now I often talk about the strength of Mother Nature, and one of the most amazing things about travelling in Australia is you get to see it right up front. And it always surprises me. There's always something new going on out there. Just recently, Graham did one of the most awesome treks ever up through the Gulf, where they pretty much fronted Mother Nature the whole way, because there used to be a track there, but it was gone, wasn't it?
No, mate, no, there was never a track there, no. You mean the one up through the Gulf?
Righto, yeah, okay. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page again.
No, there was a track only so far.
Yes.
And we continued on from the end of that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Righto. Just recently, when he was doing that, I was over in his end of the world, in the Kimberley. And I had Milo there, which is why Milo isn't here today, because she's a bit shattered at the moment. She got home, but on one front right-hand wheel, driving it. Good thing I had a locker. The CV was busted, had the back axle wired in, the pinion had shaken out. Brakes still worked. She really copped a hiding up there. Mind you, she always does. She's out front and we did a lot of hard Ks, but one of the amazing tracks we did up there was called the Munger Track, 220 Ks from Mount Elizabeth Station. It's on private land, but like a lot of the best private land, they allow access and they make a buck out of it too, but that's all right. 220 Ks from Mount Elizabeth Station right up to a place called Walcott Inlet, where there used to be a mission, Aboriginal mission, the Munger mission. And this track, you know, like probably 3/4 of it was low range, lots of rocks, clambering, stuff like that. You get a camper trailer through. I ran into two families up there. They had to do a lot of rock piling at some of the jump ups, but they loved it, you know. The kids were so good at stacking rocks, it was amazing. And Dad worked up a thirst and they were well prepared for that too. So they were out there having so much fun. We've done this trip, and they're the only people we did see. It's pretty lonely. Fantastic. We've done this trip and the scenery was just unreal, and all the way along, you know, great big rocky outcrops, and then you get big grassy plains, and every time you thought you had a handle on the country, it changed, which is one of the best things about travelling in Australia. And I'm thinking all the time, wow, this Walcott Inlet, this will be something special. Now, I know what you're thinking. Something special means a nice pub, some palm trees. They didn't have the pub. Guess what? Didn't have the palm trees either. We popped out at Walcott Inlet after 5 days of straggling away on this track, and it was one of the worst places I've ever seen. Like visually, you know. To begin with, it was all pretty flat, nothing wrong with that, but it was all stubbly old grass that had burnt down in the dry season, so it's all black and sooty underfoot, and it's black soil, which You've got to be brought up with it to find it attractive. I was, but I still, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of grey and black going on there. And the inlet itself was about from here to the other side of the tents, and we couldn't see where it came in because it was like miles that way. I think it was 22 miles or something. And it sort of went into a dingy looking creek up the other end, and there's nothing to see. There's no birds, there's very few trees. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, I finally found it. Finally found the a-hole of Australia. This isn't very pleasant. What's going on here? And then I saw a Pajero parked up underneath a tree in the distance, and there's a couple of tents. I thought, well, we're not the only silly buggers who came here to have a look at this place. And off we go. No one's there at the camp. All righto. So we kept going along, following the inlet, a little bit of a track, and then all of a sudden there's a Triton ute parked under a tree, and there's these three guys sitting on the edge of the inlet. Now you've got to picture this. The edges of the banks of the inlet were like a 25-foot straight down drop of black soil, and then this huge great basin with a couple of dirty puddles in the middle. And there's these three guys sitting there on chairs, watching. I thought, geez, they got good drugs up here or something, because I don't know what these people are doing here, you know. And I walked over to them and said, hey guys, and they, you know, they were experienced fellas. That's a nice way of saying they're probably my age or more. What are you doing, guys? One of the blokes just turned around and said, having a beer, you want one? I said, no, of course, because I'm working. And he made me have one anyway. That's all right, you know, I had to do it. It's part of being an Australian. So, what are you doing? He said, we're watching the tide come in. Now, I wear a tide watch. I never used to wear a watch until they made one with the tide on it. It's the best thing ever if you're a four-wheel driver. And I looked at my watch and I thought, oh, you wallies. Like, it's an hour and a half off high tide, you know? I'm thinking, tide's come in, there's like 3 dirty puddles out there. I didn't say that. I said, oh, fair income, eh? Pretty exciting stuff. He said, yeah, mate. He said, it is. You've never seen anything like it. Oh, yeah. Do you know what? We left them. By this stage, I figured they'd had too much out of that fridge already if they thought that was exciting. And we went a little bit further along and we shot the end of the DVD with the... And just as we've set up the cameras, I looked at my watch, it's an hour off high tide, and I heard this noise. And the water started to roar in from the Gulf. And the tide came up 22 feet in 1 hour. Do you know what that looks like? I saw a flash flood once when I was a kid in the Flinders Ranges. Same deal. 1 minute, dry as, it's amazing. And then you hear this rumble of noise like a train. And all of a sudden, whooshka, in comes the water. Now, it's got a rip in. It was roaring in. And there's crocodiles everywhere. Big crocs. And there's little bunches of bubbles, which must have been schools of fish, all coming in to grab whatever it was that was in the mud. And the whole place changed. It just roared in. And we were, you know, absolutely, we got it on film. But you had to be there. It's always one of those things. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And then it stopped. And there was banks falling in and crocs chasing fish, and it's just all happening there for about 10 minutes, and then it started going out again. And it all went out in about an hour. It's just the most, I was going to say it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It wasn't the most amazing thing, but it was one of them. And that's what the bush does to you. You get to see some insane things. You get to see rock holes and springs in the middle of dry country. Places that are just amazing. The number of times I've gone for a bit of a wander and seen rock art, you know, Aboriginal rock art. And just things that blow you right away. That's Australia. I think this morning I told some people about something that happened on the west coast of Tassie. And I told them in the context of the fact that this big girl called Bob Brown tried to shut it all down to four-wheel drives. And anyway, we had a big protest. 4,000 people showed up. And now